Everyone wants to live an inspired life, yet so many people search for happiness following the footsteps of peers and taking advice from people who have different values and outcomes to which they're searching. There are people born into wealth, graduated from the best universities in the world, and there are people who have none of that and yet are living extraordinary lives full of fulfillment and reward. The purpose of this podcast is to share insights and strategies that allow you to question the status quo and think freely, so you can design your life and be who you want to be. We get one life. Time is our most valuable asset. I believe that when we're free and able to focus on meaningful work, we become better human beings. This is Always Free, and I'm your host, Jason Graystone.
Welcome to the leading podcast for financial empowerment and wealth creation. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can connect with Jason on social media and subscribe to the Jason Graystone YouTube channel for weekly videos. Don't forget to also subscribe to the weekly newsletter to receive frequent educational content and action steps to help you design your life so you can be who you want to be. For news on all future events and updates, go to jasongraystone.com.
All right, welcome back to the podcast, guys. Hopefully you've had a great week so far. If this is the first time you're listening to the number one podcast for financial empowerment and wealth creation. And I highly recommend that if this is the first episode you've listened to, go back to the beginning and start there, because it's kind of a journey in order that I've taken you on to help you empower yourself around your personal finances and your financial independence. So, go back and listen to the episodes if you haven't listened. This week, I'm going to be talking about financial independence, and financial freedom. The key element to that is time. That's what we're all trying to get after, is time. More time, because the more time we have, we're not necessarily going to be sitting there drinking cocktails on a beach, although we might do that for a bit. Typically, human beings don't want to do that for very long. It gets quite boring, and you want to go and serve, and you want to be fulfilled by providing value to someone or helping people. And when you have time, you can decide what you choose to do with that time. You don't end up stuck in a job that you don't particularly like. You can just choose to move away from that, and you can kind of guide your life and make decisions that you want to make that are aligned with your true values. And that's what really financial independence is all about. Financial freedom is the ability to be in a position where you can choose what you do every day. So time is the key element. And I've just been thinking a lot about people wasting time this week, purely because just this week my Instagram account, which I've spent probably 3 to 4 years consistently posting, consistently providing value every day, posting every day. I've built about 18,000 followers on there, and I logged in, I think it was on Tuesday this week, and found that I'd been logged out and my account had been taken down. And the reason it had been taken down is because there's so many, well, I believe this is the reason, I still haven't got it up at the time of this recording, but there's so many fake accounts and pretend accounts and imitators imitating my account. And they've actually been contacting people and trying to scam money from people and asking them to invest money with them. And by the way, if you're listening to this and you follow me on Instagram, it's Jason Graystone. Hopefully I've got a blue verified badge if you're listening to this in the future, but it's J_Graystone as the original username. And I will never ever contact anyone on social media. Let's just get that clear. I will never contact you and ask you, how's it going? Do you want to invest some money? I'll just never ever contact you. Also, I've only got one account, or I had one account, but I've got one account. That's the plan. I won't have multiple accounts. I won't be contacting people. So if anyone ever messages you, just remember you heard me say that and just report the account straight away. So I wanted to kind of address this really, because it is relevant when it comes to time. And I don't want, people listening to this podcast are trying to, they're on their journey to develop financial independence and ultimately financial freedom. But I'm pretty dedicated to helping people achieve that. So maybe the imitators are listening to this podcast. Maybe there's lots of the imitator accounts or fake accounts listening to this podcast. And for the first part of this podcast, I really just want to talk to you guys really, because it's about your time. Firstly, you're going out and marketing my content. So thanks for that, first of all. But secondly, you're also helping me build a case to get Instagram to give me a blue verified badge, which will then completely, destroy all of that time and effort you've put into creating all the fake accounts and all the rest of it. So you're going against yourself. You're helping the case. And at the time of this recording of this podcast, I'm in exchange emails with Instagram now, putting a case together for a blue verified badge. So in order to create all those fake accounts and like there's backup accounts and people, I've just typed in my name. Before there wasn't any Jason Graystones. Now I can't even get another account with a name like mine because of all the different variations that they've opened accounts with, just in case one of the ones gets reported and taken down. They move it all to the next one, start contacting people with that. It's a big old operation. So most importantly, I just want to say you're wasting time. Like, you're wasting a tremendous amount of time pretending to be someone you're not. And the thing is, how is that going to work for you long term? It might be a bit of like instant win or a bit of fun on Instagram now, but what about real life? There's a man called Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he has a saying: envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. And what it means is when you go and envy someone, you're being ignorant to, one, where you have that in your own life. So the things that you're envying about them, where you have that in your own life, you're being ignorant to, because you probably do have that in your own life. And two, where the person you're envying, has the drawback in their life, because you just see the good. And that is what social media is all about, right? You just see the good, typically. So envy's ignorance because you're not seeing the full picture. You've probably heard people say, don't meet your heroes. I've spoke about it before when I went to meet one of my heroes once. But they say never meet your heroes because once you meet them, you've got them on this kind of pedestal and you're blind to the other crap that they have to deal with. And that's the reason that they're your hero, because you just idolize them because you don't see any of the downsides or the dark sides. And you'll hear people say that when you meet them, when you actually eventually go and meet them, you see that they're normal and you no longer think of them as your hero anymore. And it's a feeling that you don't want, because you see that they're just normal humans, just like you and me. And you see what they've got and you see what they haven't got, and it's a very different awakening. Lots of people say, I want to be the next Elon Musk. And when you watch the interview of him and Joe Rogan, he says it's actually not so fun being me. So instead of wanting to be the next Elon Musk or being just like Elon Musk or being me on Instagram, why not just be yourself? Because your own self is far more special than trying to be someone else. And Waldo Emerson says imitation is suicide. And when you shut down your own light, okay, your own purpose, which you're working towards, and you shut that down, and you don't want to acknowledge who you are and show that to the world and let that shine out and be authentic and original, and you just want to imitate someone else, what you're doing is you're killing your true self. So you're actually setting up a conflict where you'll never get to where you want to be because you've wasted so much time trying to be someone else. And that's not what financial independence is about. It's not about financial freedom's about. Financial freedom is about really working towards identifying your true self. So my advice is don't go and kill yourself, your true self. Like, that's madness. Life's way too good for that. And you've got way too much to bring into the world. So just do that. Every person listening to this podcast has something very, very special. They've got some light inside them to bring to the world. So if you want a nice life, go after that and get it. The time you're spending trying to be someone else is just taking away time from you designing your own life. You're wasting serious time, and we don't have that much time. So that's my little rant on that, really, and I'll kind of leave it there. But I want to talk about time because we are all working, and that just highlighted the fact that people do waste time, and that is a prime example of the opposite of financial freedom. You're wasting time and you're trying to be someone else, which is a complete opposite. It's almost, as I said before, it's like having a goal of world peace, but trying to learn how to create an atomic weapon. It's a complete conflict. It's stopping you doing that. It's complete opposite. So following on from that, the masters listening to this who are, focused on their financial freedom, I want to kind of keep the time thing going. And I want to talk about something called Paretos Law, Paretos Rule. And this can help you, have quantum growth in your income and can really make a drastic difference to how you spend your time on Earth. So Pareto was this economist, and he created this mathematical formula to describe the unequal distribution of wealth in his country. And there's actually an unequal distribution of wealth in the entire world, but he did it for his country, and he observed that 20% of the people owned 80% of the nation's wealth. Now, he didn't know it at the time, but that rule can actually be uncannily applied to many situations, and it's useful in many disciplines, including the study of business and time management and everything. And it's also useful to help you prioritize and manage your time, your work, and your life. So just some examples that he theorized was that 20% of the defects cause 80% of the problems in most products. Now, any project managers listening to this know that 20% of the work consumes 80% of the time and resources. That 20% is made up of the first 10% and the last 10% of the project. And some other examples are 80% of a company's revenue are generated by 20% of its customers, 80% of complaints come from 20% of customers, 80% of quality issues impact 20% of a company's products. And then there's the opposite rule as well, like 20% of investors provide 80% of funding, 20% of employees use 80% of all sick days, 20% of a blog's post generate 80% of its traffic, and it goes on and on and on. There's an unlimited number of examples that we tend to apply this 80-20 rule in our personal and working lives. So what I wanted to do is I kind of wanted to share with you a few ways that you can use the 80-20 rule to enhance your own productivity in your life or in your business. Because when we talk about financial independence and financial freedom, we're talking about maximizing the efficient use of our time, efficiency in our time. So firstly, if you go and look closely at the items in your list, your to-do list, because I know many people listening to this have lists, the chances are only a few are tied to really important issues. It might be satisfying to cross off a large number of smaller issues. We all love crossing things off, which is why lists are so powerful. But the 80-20 rule suggests that you focus on few more important items that will generate the more significant results. So when you do this, the list might not get much shorter, but you'll be practicing effective prioritization. Secondly, let's just say that you're assessing risks for an up-and-coming project. You'll find that not every risk carries equal significance. So select the risks that pose the highest potential for damage and focus your monitoring and risk planning activities on them. And obviously don't ignore the others, but just distribute your efforts proportionally. Another example is a lot of companies hate sales or hate focusing on profits. They go out there and try and do anything but. I know Daniel Priestley has got this saying, ABS, anything but sales, when really the best thing you can ask yourself if you're working with a team on your business is, what is the most profitable action I can do today? And that's how you put that to the top of the list, and you forget everything else. Another thing you can do if you're in business is focus on the 20% of your customers that make up the bulk of your revenue and invest all of your time and understanding in them or in similar customers to them. That's why you've heard people talk about building your ideal client avatar. It's because you're going to get the most profit from the smallest amount of people, and that's why we talk about niching and all the rest of it, because you'll get the most profit from them. And when we're talking about wealth building, you want to be using your time efficiently to make as much money as possible. Another thing you can do is regularly evaluate the 80% of the customers that generate 20% of your business. So the ones that kind of, don't generate a lot of business, and identify opportunities to get rid of them. Like, there's plenty of people that actually sack clients, sack customers that aren't producing the highest amount of business for you, or they're taking up too much of your time for little reward. If you're in customer service, if 20% of your products are creating 80% of your complaints, do some root cause analysis to identify quality issues in that product. and focus all your attention on trying to get that up. If you're an entrepreneur, and there's many entrepreneurs who listen to this podcast, you can use the 80-20 rule to evaluate your workload. You might find that a disproportionate amount of time is spent on, like trivial work such as admin and, easily outsourced expenses, which I've spoke about before. Even when you're evaluating your goals, focus on the few that are most critical to your development. Focus on the most critical to your success and just go after those first. Maybe you're not an entrepreneur, maybe you're a manager in a business. My advice is don't focus on the 20% of top performers in the team at the expense of the other 80%. Your responsibilities are to increase the number of top performers, not just assess, and potentially eliminate those who are poor performers. If you're an investor, you can use the 80-20 rule in your investment diversification. You might make adjustments to your portfolio. If only 20% of your investments are driving 80% of the results, pay careful attention to your overall portfolio mix or the ratio of your passive investments over your speculation. So a good question to ask is, how do you outsource 80% of the things that you don't want or need to do? And there's plenty of ways of doing that. You can hire a team member and invest in a team member, or you can outsource it to a virtual assistant. And here's where people kind of say, oh, only rich people have assistants. People have said to me, oh God, you've got a PA. Well, we're living in a time where this stuff can be outsourced to virtual assistants at a very, very affordable cost. It's seen as an expense because people don't really put a value on their time. They don't take the time to put value on their time. They'll happily spend £70 a month on a cable or Sky bill just because everyone else has got Sky, but they won't pay £50 to £100 a month on outsourcing some tasks to get their time back. And what they're blind to is the amount of money they can make by outsourcing all these little things. We live in a world where you can outsource very, very cheaply diary management, email inbox management, project planning, holiday planning, research, much, much more. Whatever it is that you can outsource in your day-to-day tasks of what you need to get done or what you have to get done, you can actually do that stuff. You can actually outsource that stuff. And you can use websites like Fiverr or Upwork, and you can create voice memos and little tutorials, maybe screen recordings. You send them a video on how to do it once, and then they just do it for you. If you're looking for virtual assistants, I highly recommend Virtual PA London. They're in London based, very friendly team, great growing team. They're growing sustainably, they're growing well, and very, very reasonable costs for what return you will get from outsourcing that. And all this feels uncomfortable at first, but I promise you, when you outsource the crap and focus on the 20% that you love and you're good at and you're eager to jump out of bed and do, you'll become unbelievably more productive and your income will grow exponentially. And with your new income, you can easily cover the costs of the new PA. And there's almost like this transition period where you start delegating, start outsourcing, you bring in more income, and then you delegate more and you delegate more and you bring in more income, and then your return just skyrockets. And all of a sudden, the outsourcing stays put. And you get to this kind of sweet spot where your income's growing exponentially, but the outsourcing still stays the same. And it's just a drop in the ocean. Now, there's a little caveat with this as well. So, of course, if you end up using a virtual assistant or a PA or outsourcing and then just kicking your feet up and doing nothing, it won't have the same effect. You have to use this as a tool to free up your time so then you can hammer the 20% that you're focused on. Now, whether that's learning new skills or becoming more efficient at your job or becoming better in your business or learning to trade, learning to invest your money, it won't have the same effect if you're just using it as I've delegated that, now I'm not going to do anything. And lastly, if you're still doing, menial tasks that cost less than the value you place on your hourly rate, then you're doing yourself a massive disservice. If you think you're worth £50 an hour, it makes absolutely no sense to do jobs that cost less than that to do. Hire a handyman, get a cleaner, hire a gardener, Focus on what you're good at and pay people to do the 80% that doesn't move you forward. So that's kind of the message. It was all based around time. I started off with a bit of a rant because I've been hacked on Instagram, but it kind of inspired me to talk about a wasted time. We're only here once. To create true financial freedom, we need to put time at the highest priority and be laser focused on how we're going to spend the time here and how that's going to move us towards our goals, not away from them. So hope you enjoyed the episode, guys. Have a little think about that. I would really appreciate it if you could give this a little 5-star rating and leave a little review. Each week I post the reviews on my social media and in my newsletter. So give it a little rating and review if you enjoyed it. Share it around. And until next week, have a great rest of your day and weekend. And I'll see you then.
Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. For news on all future events and updates, go to jasongraystone.com.